Hello my dear YouTuber friends, and I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video, which is effectively part 2 of my performance guide, hints and tips for improving your performance in Flight Simulator 2020. I released a video roughly a week ago. I'll link it in the top right for you. Go and watch that first. In that video I go over different hints and tips of how to increase your performance in Flight Simulator 2020 so that you can reach decent frames per second. In this video I'm going to go over a few more hints and tips with hopes that you can improve your frames. So let's not waste time. Let's get straight into this video. Okay, so before I get to the meat and veg of this video, the hints themselves, keep in mind, like I mentioned in the other video, there's no golden hints or tips. You have to try all sorts of different things to see what improves on your system and in your simulator, your specific simulator. But this first hint should improve a lot of people's frames per second. So let's get straight into it. Just keep in mind, or keep in memory, that my frames here are averaging about 33, let's say. So press escape, go to general, left click, and in general you want to be on graphics. First tip I'm going to show you is render scaling. Let's hide these frames just by going to options and display FPS. Render scaling, so let's just read the description there. Scale the resolution of the 3D scene rendering. So it's not screen resolution, it's render scaling, something slightly different. I've seen this tip on various different forums and even a couple of different videos. If you lower the value, by default it's on 100 on medium global rendering quality. If you go to high, and goodness knows what, that could be higher. If you lower that, so 80 seems to be the golden mark here, or a good resolution render scaling to go down to. As you can see, the rendering resolution has now gone down to that value, so it's below 1080p. But let's show you. Let's hit apply and save there, so it's on 80. Put the frames back up and go back and resume. You can now see that my frames per second is now averaging, let it settle down a second, let it settle down, it's now going to average about 36 to 37. So that render scaling is a massive tip and should give you a massive improvement. And as you can see, the world around you, so the quality of the world graphics outside, hasn't changed a great deal. And in fact, I generally now keep my sim, or keep my settings, on that 80% render scaling, because it gives me a good boost in frames per second. I was already getting decent frames, but now that's actually improved them. Give that one a try. That's a massive tip. That should massively increase your frames per second by at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 frames per second. So give that one a try. Let's go on to the next tip. Okay, so these next couple of tips may affect your frames and may improve them, depending where you are and depending what you have them set on already. Let's go straight into them. Press escape. Let's get to options. Go to general. In graphics, we're going to go right down to the bottom, scroll right down with your mouse. This glass cockpit refresh rate, on medium preset, it's set on low. If you have high or ultra, this may be set on medium or high levels. Let's show you the effect of high on my frames. So apply that, go back and resume. You'll now notice my frames have dropped quite dramatically. It seems to be struggling to stay even in the 30s, maybe the low 30s. can see there, maybe 32, 33. Let's change that back to where I had it. Go back to general, scroll right down, and I'll put it back down to low. And apply and save. And go back and resume. Now you can see my frames are back where they were in the high 30s. That setting effectively affects these sort of glass cockpit refresh rates on these views here in your cockpit. I've not noticed a massive difference from high to low. So my advice, if you want to squeeze out a few extra frames, definitely put that setting, let's go back to it. So back in graphics, put that setting glass cockpit refresh rate down to low. And you will find, if you had it on high or medium, that you will be getting a few extra frames per second. Actually, a viewer mentioned that on my last video. I've always had my setting on low anyway, but I thought I'll try it on high, and it does affect the frames. So if you got it set higher than low, I would put it down to low, and you will find that you will get a few extra frames. This next tip, let's get straight into it. Go to general. Now you can alter things like screen resolution that will affect the quality. I keep mine on 1080p, but if you're if you're basically if you have that set on something lower, let's just show you this. Let's put it on 720p, which would be that one there. So I'll keep the changes there, apply and save. As you can see, yeah, it does affect the quality. Things seem a little bit blurrier. Frames, actually my frames have not massively improved by lowering the screen resolution. So depending on your system, that may or may not work. But yeah, for the sake of it, I'll just keep mine on 1080p. Looks a lot better. And like I say, the actual quality or the frames per second are not massively effective seemingly on my system. It may be different for your system. So that's back in 1080p. Couple of other settings I want to mention here are basically trees and grass and bushes. Now dependent on where you are, obviously I'm flying around London, there's a few green areas, so I've set them down to low, trees and grass and bushes. Alter them to low if you have them on medium or high, or alter them down one, depending on your setting. There's a few less trees and grass and bushes. Has it affected my frames again? Not massively. I might be squeezing out maybe 1 or 2 extra frames. In London, it doesn't massively affect the scene outside of the aircraft. If you're in other rural areas, that will obviously have an effect. But if you have a lot of grass and bushes and trees, that may affect your frames. You may be able to squeeze out 1 or 2 extra frames per second, dependent on where you are. Again, for the sake of it, and because my frames, I'm generally happy with them anyway, I keep mine on medium. But have a play around with them, see if that improves your frames. It may do, like I said, depending on where you are. So that's all the settings and hints and tips I want to show you inside the actual simulator itself. Now I'm going to show you another hint, which is overclocking your graphics card. Okay, so this next tip, I'm going to show you how I'm going to overclock my graphics card. I'm showing you this as basically a completeness for my tips and guides so far. A couple of people have asked me in the past, will it improve performance? I'm going to show you on my system. Remember, I'm running a 1066GB. If you're running something different, don't follow what I'm going to do. I don't specifically overclock per se my graphics card anyway. So for goodness sake, don't follow what I'm going to do. I'm not an expert. I simply typed into YouTube search bar how to overclock the 1066GB graphics card, and I watched a couple of videos by well-known YouTubers who seemed to know what they were talking about, and I followed their steps. A big disclaimer, this could damage your graphics card and it could affect the longevity of your graphics card. Keep it in mind. And like I say, if you have a different graphics card, especially if you don't have an NVIDIA graphics card, don't follow these steps. It won't work for you if you've not got an NVIDIA. And if basically go and type your graphics card into YouTube search bar, into YouTube search engine, and watch a couple of tutorial videos if you're going to try this yourself. What frames do I have at the moment? So sort of 37, 38ish. Let's pause the simulator. I'm just going to increase a couple of values on my graphics card. Don't want to overdo it. I cringe every time I do this. I really don't enjoy doing this. I keep my graphics card basically at stock values. I'm happy with the frames I'm getting. I'm just showing you this as an example, like I've mentioned. Let's just increase the values of this. This is not a tutorial. Keep it in mind. Don't follow what I'm doing. Last time I'll say that. Increase the voltage and the target power and GPU temp. Okay. Oh boy, let's hope this doesn't crash my simulator or PC. Click apply. You can see the GPU, the megahertz of my GPU has increased. Has it increased the frames? Maybe it doesn't seem to have a great effect in Flight Simulator for me. If you've got a mid-spec GPU like I have, I would say this is probably not going to increase your frames unless you're struggling and you're below that sort of 30 frames per second. You can give it a try, but like I say, at least go and watch a couple of tutorial videos on this. Let's put them back to default. Maybe. Okay, so maybe it did increase. This is at default settings now, which is where I'm going to keep it. Maybe overclocking did improve my frames slightly, but not by any measurable effect. And I would generally advise staying away from it unless you're happy overclocking your GPU, your graphics card. It doesn't massively seem to affect it. So there you go. That's part 2 of my hints and tips for improving your performance in Flight Simulator 2020. Give one or two of these, especially the earlier tips I showed you before, a try. You will find that they will increase your performance. The other tips, you can give them a try to see if it helps. Give the video a like if it's been helpful to you. Keep commenting below about other tips and hints on improving performance in Flight Simulator 2020. It helps the general community around my YouTube channel to help improve their performance. Subscribe for more. I'm always going to release Flight Simulator videos, and I'll see you soon.